Do you believe a lake can be haunted? What would you do if someone said to you, leave your home right now or be killed? Would you leave or would you stay? In this video, we're talking about the town of Oscarville and Lake Lanier. And by the end of this video, let me know, would you stay, would you leave, and do you think this lake is haunted? Let's get into it. Lake Lanier is located in Forsyth County. Before Lake Lanier was known to be one of the deadliest destinations in America, it was a town of thriving Black people called Oscarville. So right now, where the lake is currently, it was actually a town before it was drowned out during the Reconstruction era in the 1800s. Oscarville was a prosperous Black community with nearly 1,100 residents, most of them who were freed after fighting in the American Civil War. 58 of those residents were landowners. A lot of the people in the town were carpenters, blacksmiths, bricklayers, and farmers. They had the best crops in the state of Georgia. They created a healthy and thriving community with churches, schools, and businesses. The Black people in the community were fearful that they would be attacked someday. And due to the race riots in 1906, unfortunately, that day did come. It's also extremely important to note, in the early 1830s, the land was a part of the Creek Confederacy, which was a union of multiple indigenous tribes. By 1838, the U.S. government forcibly evicted most of the members from what would be one of the southeasternmost origins of the Trail of Tears. Soon after the land was sectioned into towns, the new community named after former Georgia Governor John Forsyth. By 1912, approximately 1,100 Black people owned land and operated businesses in Forsyth County. Now we're about to really get into it, y'all. On September 5th, 1912, a 22-year-old white woman by the name of Ellen Grice said two Black men came into her bedroom and attempted to R-word her. She says they jumped out the window once her mom opened her bedroom door. Police arrested 5 Black men in connection with the case. They were put in jail in the Cumming Town Square. A Black preacher by the name of Grant Smith asked the police to release the men because he didn't think there was enough evidence to keep them in jail. Grant was overheard saying Ellen Grice was probably in a consensual relationship with one of the men and called it rape. As soon as the white men nearby heard this, Grant Smith was horsewhipped and almost beaten to death in front of the courthouse. A crowd of nearly 200 white people formed, demanding that Grant either be burned alive or hung. The sheriff tried to make appeals for the crowd to leave because the white people tried to storm the courthouse and take Grant by force, but couldn't get to him because he was locked in the courthouse vault. So Grant Smith dodged that one. They wasn't able to get him. But now, just a few days later, on September 12th, 1912, an 18-year-old white woman by the name of May Crow was R-worded and beaten in the Big Creek community of Forsyth County, Georgia. The next morning, her body was found half naked, bloody, and hidden under a pile of leaves. Her skull had been bulged with stone. When they found her, she was alive, but she later died in the hospital. Searchers found a small pocket mirror at the scene of the crime that was said to belong to Ernest Knox, a 16-year-old Black boy from Georgia. They say that around midnight that same day, Ernest Knox returned to the scene with 3 accomplices: Oscar Daniel, 17, Oscar's sister, Trusty Jane Daniel, 22, and Jane's live-in boyfriend, Rob Edwards, 24. They were accused of R-wording her. They were all arrested the next day. It's unclear if Ed Collins was there. He was a neighbor of Trusty Jane and Oscar Daniel, but he was held as a witness. I couldn't find too much information on Tony Howell, but he was accused of the May Crow assault, but somehow it got pointed to Ernest Knox. And you can see all of them in this picture being held by police. And of course, all of these people I just named were all Black. Just want to make that clear. The police arrested Ernest at his home the next day. He confessed to the crime after being subjected to a form of torture known as mock lynching, where they put a rope around your neck and they pretend like they're going to hang you, but they don't, just to scare you so you can confess to something that you most likely didn't do. But Ernest did stand trial for this attack. Because of the news of May Crow in the confession of Ernest Knox, the white people became increasingly angry. Later that day, a lynch mob of about 2,000 white people attacked the county jail, where Rob Edwards was being detained. They dragged Edwards from his cell and hung him from a telephone pole in the town square. He may have been shot to death before being hung. The Atlanta Georgian reported that the corpse was mangled into something hardly resembling a human form. It said that at the trial, Trustee Daniel testified as a witness and recounted the midnight attack on the victim by the men. Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were quickly convicted of rape and murder by an all-white jury of 11 farmers and one night watchman. The following day, October 4th, both teenagers were sentenced to death by hanging, scheduled for October 25th. Even though hanging was illegal in the state of Georgia, they did it anyway. The scheduled execution was to be viewed by only the victim's family, a minister, and law enforcement, but a crowd estimated at between 5,000 and 8,000 gathered to watch what would become a public hanging of the two boys. The total county population was around 12,000 at the time, and almost 8,000 people showed up. They never had a real opportunity to fight this alleged crime. They were forced to admit it, whether it was true or not. There was no real evidence. That pocket mirror probably wasn't even his. He probably never even seen that in his whole life. It was probably most likely planted there. And why would anybody bring back some accomplices? Why do the crime, leave, come back to it, and not just come back to it, bring more people to it? That just don't make no sense. The sheriffs, the policemen, the searchers, everybody was just lying. Even if it was evidence that they did not do it, they were still going to be blamed for it just because they were black. In the following months, a group of men called Night Riders terrorized black citizens, firing guns into their homes. Firebombs were thrown into the church. Every black person they saw, they were determined to run out of town, warning them to leave in 24 hours or be killed. Those who resisted would be harassed. They would be murdered, including shots fired into their homes or livestock killed. An estimated 98% of the black residents of Forsyth County left. They ran these black people out of their town, out of their homes, took their farms, and didn't even know what to do with it. Because in 1915, a weevil infestation killed the crops that the black people originally did until the white people came in and forced them out. All because those white farmers did not know what they were doing, so they started ruining the crops. And even though they did survive the weevil infestation, being one of the few regions in the state to escape total dissemination, it made them eager to share their methods, which all they ended up doing was getting chicken poop to fertilize the ground. This eventually got the attention of the Atlanta mayor, who was developing a dam to ensure the city's water supply, hydroelectric needs, and flood control. He spent 2 years working with the Army Corps of Engineers to seize nearly all of the recovered farmland. When the farmland was sold, they sold it to the black people of the town for pennies on the dollar, almost nothing for their land, and left the 58 residents who were actually landowners nothing. And since they were left with nothing, they weren't able to pass down anything to future generations. In the early 1950s, the U.S. Corps of Engineers bought the land in and around Lake Lanier from the descendants of those same white residents who had driven the original black landowners out of town. Over time, pieces of the land would be sold to the government, and by 1950, a plan to build Lake Lanier was in full effect. Soon the entire town of Oscarville would be underwater and flooded, in conjunction with the Beaufort Dam to support the strong demand of water supply to the nearby cities. The lake was named after poet and musician Sidney Lanier, and also a Confederate private. The construction would destroy more than 50 acres of farmland and displace more than 250 families. As for the marked graves, it would relocate 20 cemeteries in the corpse, but some unmarked graves were left behind. The lake is 692 miles of shoreline and is 26 miles long, covering almost 47 miles of the original riverbed. It's more than 200 feet deep, and there are trees inside of this lake that stand over 60 feet tall. That's just ridiculous. It's considered when full and at its peak at 1,071 feet above sea level. The concrete block of some buildings were submerged and still remain beneath the lake today. Over the decades, when the lake's water levels dropped during the drought, submerged roads, tire parts, and other artifacts are usually exposed. After the blacks were ran out of their homes, the town maintained a whites-only policy far into the 1980s. In the 1950s and 60s, places were only open to white residents, such as churches, restaurants, etc. Now let's get into the spooky, eerie stuff. I mentioned before how they moved the marked graves, but what happened to the unmarked graves and the people left in their houses that didn't leave? About 98% of the people left. So the 2% that stayed had to have just died there. So what happened to them? Are they and the people in the unmarked graves haunting Lake Lanier? Since this lake was made, over 700 people have died at this lake between 1956 to 2023, with the most recent death being that of Walter Juarez Gordado, who was 37 years old, who went missing Saturday, October 21st, 2023. He went missing after jumping from his jet ski around 5:30 p.m. and was found Monday, October 23rd, in about 20 feet of water. Another recent death that happened this year is Thomas Milner, a 24-year-old man who died after he jumped into the lake and was electrocuted on July 27th, 2023. On September 2nd, 2023, Gavry Alexander Whitlock, who was 23, ran down a dock, slipped and fell into the water. His body was found in 17 feet of water. They pronounced him dead at the scene. A week prior to Whitlock's death, another 23-year-old man named Edgar Stephen Cruz Martinez drowned when swimming in Lake Lanier on August 26, 2023. Then before this, two men aged 27 and 61 died on the same day in unrelated events on July 29, 2023, and they were both swimming in Lake Lanier. In August of 2023, 22-year-old Brian Terrasona died while swimming in the lake. 27-year-old Leonardo Martinez died July 31st, 2023, while swimming in Lake Lanier, and his body was recovered August 3rd. Dorian Pinson and two friends jumped off a boat in April of 2023. His two friends were rescued by someone else in another boat, but Dorian never came up. He was found 86 days later by a private search team his family hired. He was 24 years old. In 2012, 11-year-old Kyle Glover, the stepson of R&B singer Usher, died from injuries he suffered when a jet ski collided with his inner tube. His mother, fashion designer Tamika Foster, recently collected more than 25,000 signatures for the lake to be drained, cleaned, and restored, but the lake has not been drained yet. Who knows if it ever will be. There were 6 drownings in 2022, 4 in 2021, 7 in 2020, 8 in 2019 and 18, 10 in 2011 and 14, and 11 in 1999. There's been 166 boating incidents with 57 boating fatalities and 145 drownings between 1999 and 2018. More than 200 people have died at Lake Lanier between 1994 and 2022, according to the U.S. Today in Georgia DNR, with most of the deaths attributed to drownings. Those who have survived close calls, who are expert swimmers, say they feel like they're being pulled down by one of their arms or legs, and when they would try to swim back up to the top, they felt heavier than usual, and they had to fight their way back up to the top. Researchers have said it could be all of the debris left under the lake. My first thought was it could be the souls of the people left under there pulling them down, because it's disrespectful to damage anyone's tombstone, and those people did more than just disrespect it. Okay, when people go missing in this lake, divers don't even want to go in because of how dangerous it is. They wait for them to float to the top, but divers who have say when they went under, they found limbs of dead people. The deadliest day at Lake Lanier happened on Christmas Day 1964. a car accident that involved two families with a total of 11 adults and children. The two families, the Browns and Rogers families, lived in their Gainesville home with their children, 4 adults and 7 children, between the ages of infant to 6 years old. Around 1 p.m., they all decided they wanted some apples to go with their Christmas Day meal. So both families piled in the Browns family car to drive across Lake Lanier to the apple orchard. But sadly, the driver lost control of the car clipped a guardrail, hit a power pole so hard it snapped in half. It flipped into Lake Lanier. 7 people died, 2 adults including the driver and 5 children. Now let's get into the Lady of the Lake, which is the most popular among residents. In April of 1958, Delia Parker Young was traveling with Susie Roberts. They stopped at a gas station and left without paying. They were headed to the Three Gables Roadhouse, but they never made it because Susie lost control of her 1954 Ford and crashed off the right side of the bridge. Skid marks suggest the women crashed into the lake. Divers searched for them, but no vehicle or remains were found. 18 months later, a local fisherman would spot the decomposing body of a woman beneath Jerry D. Jackson Bridge. The bloated body floated on the lake's surface, missing 2 toes from its left foot and without any hands. They couldn't positively identify her, but they knew it was Delia. People said they knew it was her because dozens of divers on State Route 53 had seen her after she vanished, appearing as a ghostly, handless apparition, walking down the highway in a blue dress, the same blue dress she borrowed from Susie that she wore that night that they crashed. The people who've seen her say that the ghost appeared to be lost, almost as if she was searching for something. In November 1990, they drained the lake to put pillars up for the bridge. By doing that, they found the shell of a car with human remains inside, just sitting there behind the wheel. By some belongings in the car, they were able to identify the person as Susie Roberts. The soul of a young woman in a blue dress has been reportedly seen many times walking up and down the length of Lake Lanier Bridge. She is missing her hands, just like the woman the fishermen found, and she is known as the Lady of the Lake. They say Susie has been seen pulling people under the water, but my thing is, how if she doesn't have any hands? That's questionable, but I do believe she's been seen walking around. That part is believable. And another thing that's eerie is people have seen a mysterious raft floating on the lake late at night. They've seen a shadow figure pushing along with the pole, holding a lantern. Those who have seen this mysterious raft say it seems to appear and disappear out of nowhere. 2 fishermen say around 1 a.m. where the raft is seen is 45 feet deep, but yet it's still using a pole to push him along. They say the shadow figure is seen shouting and jumping into the lake and then just disappears. Let me know what you think about that. Do you believe Lake Lanier is haunted? I think it is. I think the black people who were killed and left there and those in the unmarked graves are haunting the place, pulling people under, maybe even the ones who's died on the lake since it's been made in 1956 could be haunting the lake. It's also possible that some of the people who have drowned there have gotten stuck on all of the debris under the lake. Mark Huddle, who's a professor at Georgia College and State University who specializes in African American history, told Yahoo News, "I don't have to believe in ghosts to believe that a place like Lake Lanier could be haunted. The haunting is that this is a place where the dark and bloody struggle for American race relations played out in a terrible way." Let me know how you feel about this. Let me know if you think Lake Lanier is haunted down in the comments so we can talk about it. And if you haven't already and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.